If you've been hearing confusing information about potential $2,000 checks tied to tariff policies, you're not alone. And this video cuts through the noise with what you actually need to know right now. Here's what's happening. President Trump has been discussing tariff proposals that could directly impact your wallet. And new developments suggest these policies might translate into direct payments to American households. But here's the critical part. Not everyone qualifies, and timing matters. Social Security beneficiaries, retirees, and fixed-income households are asking the same urgent question. Will I receive this? When? And what do I need to do? In the next few minutes, we're breaking down exactly how this $2,000 proposal works, who the government is saying qualifies for these checks, and most importantly, what steps you should take today to make sure you're not left out if this moves forward. We're also addressing the eligibility confusion because, frankly, there's a lot of misinformation circulating, and you deserve clear, straight answers based on what's actually being proposed. Whether you're on Social Security, receiving retirement income, or just trying to understand if this affects you directly, stay with us. We're covering the specific income thresholds, the timeline for potential distribution, and exactly how to verify your status in the system. This is real-time information that could mean thousands of dollars in your pocket. So let's get into the details that actually matter. Let's start by understanding what's actually on the table here, because this isn't just some random proposal thrown around in Washington. This is tied directly to some pretty substantial economic policy that's already being discussed at the highest levels. When we talk about tariffs, most people's eyes glaze over, right? But here's the thing. Tariffs are basically taxes on imported goods, and when prices go up on those goods, someone has to pay for that. The Trump administration has been floating the idea that instead of letting consumers take the full hit on their grocery bills and household items, they'd rather redistribute some of that tariff revenue directly to American households through direct payments. And we're talking about checks that could reach $2,000 per person in some scenarios. Now, the reason this matters so much to you, especially if you're on Social Security or living on a fixed income, is because inflation has already squeezed your purchasing power pretty hard over the last few years. A $2,000 injection into your account could actually make a real difference in your monthly budget. But before we get too excited about that possibility, we need to talk about what's real, what's still being debated, and what you actually need to do to position yourself for this if it does happen. The proposal that's been circulating through policy discussions involves the federal government collecting tariff revenues and then using a portion of those revenues to send direct payments to eligible American households. The thinking behind this is actually pretty straightforward. If tariffs are going to raise prices for consumers anyway, why not take the government's cut of that revenue and return it directly to people? It's a way of saying the tariff policy won't be a pure loss for everyday Americans. But here's where it gets complicated, and this is where most people get confused. The eligibility for these checks isn't automatic. The government has to determine who gets them based on several criteria, and those criteria are still being finalized in policy discussions. From what we're seeing in the most recent policy briefs and discussions, the initial proposals suggest that payments would be targeted toward lower and middle-income households first. This typically means households earning below a certain threshold. We're talking somewhere in the range of $75,000 to $100,000 annually for a single person, though these numbers could shift. For married couples filing jointly, the threshold might be higher, potentially in the $120,000 to $150,000 range. But here's the critical part. Social Security income doesn't always count the same way as earned income, which is important because many of you watching are retirees whose primary income is Social Security. The way Social Security is typically treated in these situations is interesting. When the government calculates your eligibility for various federal benefits and programs, they look at your adjusted gross income, which is a specific calculation that can actually be lower than your total Social Security benefit. This is actually somewhat favorable for seniors because it means your Social Security benefit might not count against you as heavily as you'd think. However, if you have other sources of income, investment income, pensions, part-time work, rental income, those will definitely be factored in. So the calculation for you as a retiree might actually look pretty different than it does for a working age person earning a salary. Now let's talk about the actual mechanics of how this would work if it does move forward. The government would likely use tax return data and Social Security Administration records to determine eligibility. This is actually good news and bad news. The good news is that if you filed a tax return in the last couple of years, or if you're in the Social Security system, the government basically already has all the information they need about you. You wouldn't have to apply or fill out some complicated form. The bad news is that if something in your records is outdated, or if there's any discrepancy between different government databases, you could fall through the cracks. This is why it's absolutely crucial right now that you verify your information is correct across all your accounts. Let me walk you through what you should actually do today to prepare for this possibility. First, you need to verify your Social Security account. Go online to ssa.gov and create a My Social Security account if you don't have one already. It takes about 15 minutes and it gives you access to your earnings record, your current benefit amounts, and other critical information. Check everything on there carefully. Make sure your name is spelled correctly, that your Social Security number is right, and that your benefit amount is accurate. If you see anything that looks wrong, and I mean anything at all, call Social Security at their main number and report it. This might seem tedious, but trust me, getting this right now could mean the difference between getting a check and not getting one. The second thing you should do is verify your tax records, even if you don't normally file. If you haven't filed a tax return in the last 2 years, the government might have incomplete income information about you. Visit irs.gov and create an IRS account if you have one. You can pull your tax transcripts for free from there, and you can verify that the IRS has your current address and contact information. Again, if anything looks off, call the IRS directly. Yes, I know calling government agencies isn't fun, but this is genuinely important. Many seniors tell me they don't file taxes because they don't have to, and that's technically correct if you're below certain income thresholds. But for the purposes of eligibility for federal payments like this, having a recent tax record can actually help you, not hurt you. Here's something else that's really important that people don't talk about enough. If you have a representative payee handling your Social Security benefits, you need to make sure that person is also aware of what's happening. If someone else is managing your benefits for whatever reason, they might be contacted instead of you, or there could be confusion about who should receive the payment. Make sure you have a clear conversation with anyone who has access to your accounts or who has power of attorney over your finances. You want to be crystal clear about what you're expecting and when. Now, let's address some of the timing questions because this is where a lot of anxiety comes in. Realistically, if this policy does move forward, we're probably looking at a timeline where the proposal is finalized sometime in the next few months. The eligibility criteria are formally announced, the payments are processed through the IRS or Social Security Administration, and then actual checks or direct deposits start going out. Based on how the government typically moves on these things, we could potentially be looking at payments starting to arrive sometime in mid to late 2025. But honestly, that's speculative. The exact timeline depends on how fast Congress moves, how complex the implementation turns out to be, and whether any legal challenges arise. What we do know is that when the government has moved quickly on direct payments before, like during the pandemic stimulus checks, they were able to get money out pretty fast once they made the decision. So while we're waiting for more concrete information, that's your time frame to get your information in order. One thing that's been confusing a lot of people is the relationship between these potential tariff checks and Social Security benefits themselves. I want to be crystal clear about this. These would not be part of your Social Security benefits. They would be completely separate payments. Your Social Security check would continue exactly as it is right now. This is a different program, a different payment stream, and a different government fund. The reason I'm emphasizing this is because some people are worried that getting this payment might somehow jeopardize their Social Security or make them ineligible for other benefits. That's not how this works. These tariff-based payments aren't considered earned income, and in most cases, they won't affect your Medicare, Medicaid, supplemental security income, or any other benefit you might be receiving. However, and this is important, if you're in a situation where you're right on the edge of an income threshold for something like Medicaid or a state program, getting $2,000 could theoretically affect that. This is pretty rare for most seniors. But if you're in a situation where you have limited income and you're relying on a state program that has strict income limits, you might want to talk to a benefits counselor before any of this plays out. The area agency on aging in your community can usually connect you with someone who can answer specific questions about your situation. It's better to understand the full picture before money shows up than to be surprised later. Let's talk about what happens after you get the money, assuming this does move forward and you do qualify. The $2,000 will likely be yours to keep with no strings attached. It's not a loan, it's not an advance on anything, and it won't have to be repaid. Depending on whether it gets deposited to your bank account or comes as a check, you'll probably have it within a few weeks of it being issued. Now, here's where I want to give you some real talk about money management. If you're living on a tight budget right now, and most seniors are, you're probably already thinking about what you'd do with $2,000. Maybe it's medical bills, maybe it's home repairs, maybe it's just catching up on some expenses that have been piling up. That's all valid. But I gently suggest taking a moment to think about how this money could actually serve you best. Could some of it go into an emergency fund? Could some help you get ahead on a debt? Could some of it give you a little breathing room in your monthly budget? The money will be tempting to spend immediately, and that's understandable. But taking a beat to make a thoughtful decision could have long-term benefits for you. The other thing I want to mention is that scammers are already starting to circle around this information. You're going to start seeing emails, texts, and phone calls from people claiming they can help you get this money faster, or claiming they need your information to process your payment, or claiming that you've missed a deadline. Let me be absolutely clear. The government will never ask you to pay someone to get a payment that's legitimately coming to you. If someone is asking you for money up front, they're scamming you. If someone is asking for your social security number, your banking information, or your passwords, they're scamming you. When the actual payment does roll out, the IRS or Social Security will contact you through official channels. You can always verify by going directly to the official website or calling the official number. Do not click links in emails or texts about this. Do not call numbers that text messages give you. Just go straight to the official source and verify everything there. As we move forward, there are going to be more details announced about this proposal. Keep an eye on official government communications, legitimate news sources, and reliable analysis. We'll be keeping you updated as soon as anything concrete changes, and I encourage you to subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss that information. In the meantime, getting your records in order is the single best thing you can do for yourself. Make sure your Social Security information is accurate, make sure the IRS has your current information, and make sure someone knows how to reach you if the government needs to contact you. This might not happen exactly as proposed, or it might happen even faster than we think, but being prepared means you won't be scrambling at the last minute. You'll be ready, whatever comes next.